Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. It is mid July, it is full on summer, and today we're going to be talking about a way to convert our thinking. And I hope that you'll find that this is a really good process to go through when you are feeling really stuck with a thought. So, a couple weeks ago, I was talking with one of my coaching clients who is a physician, and she is preparing for maternity leave. If you've been there, you know what's coming, which is that she has a primary care panel. She is booked out probably for about a year. So, she has got patients on her schedule when she will be out on maternity leave. And as we were chatting, she was trying to help figure out, what am I going to do? They're telling me that I'm responsible for figuring out where to put the patients, which unfortunately is a situation that she faces over and over and over again, where it is dumped on her to hold all of the responsibility for what is going to happen with her patients. And at one point she said, "It's impossible." And I reflected back to her, "You're right. It's impossible." Simple flip in tone takes this from being a reaction, right? Where we have this emotion, we have this feeling of like it's not possible, into being it's not possible. It's a response. It's a reflection. You notice how if we just say those two, those words in the same way, but, with the different emotion, it's not possible, right? It's impossible versus it's not possible. My shoulders settle, the tone comes down, right? If we were measuring our cortisol, right, we were measuring parasympathetic tone, you can tell a huge difference. And so often, when a situation comes up and it gets us into this place of it's not possible, it's impossible, we are saying it in that reactive way because so often we have been charged with doing things that are not possible. Perhaps it's an unmanageable load of patients, perhaps it's unreasonable expectations, any number of things. But here we are in this circumstance, right, where she is being made to feel responsible for figuring out what to do with 3 months-ish worth of patients who are already on her schedule, which we could argue is already a pretty impossible thing. Like, it's ridiculous that primary care in particular, and I'm sure that this is also actually, I don't even have to say it, this is also in the specialty world, right, where visits are so booked out. And there's this imagination that, well, you're not going to have a life. You're not going to have any medical things come up. You're not going to have any last minute needs. You're not going to have any vacations or CMEs, right? We're just going to book you out for a whole year. Every once in a while in my office, I will have a patient who I've just seen for their physical. And on the way out, our front desk person will ask, do I need to book a follow-up? And every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, I'd like to schedule next year's wellness visit now. And I always think that's ridiculous because I don't know what I'm going to be doing next July. Do you? Right? I personally have not put in my vacation holds for 2026. And I used to be in a situation where I'd have to think that far out in advance, which drove me crazy. But I don't know that I'm still going to have appointments, in July on that day, whenever, anyway, that's a whole separate issue. But this idea, right, that we should do things that far in advance is making some big assumptions that I prefer that we don't make. Anyway, that is a side tangent, but you can see that in this situation where she is going on maternity leave, that baby is going to come, right? And we could look at any other situations that are similar, but at some point that we think is going to be in this relative time frame, she is not going to be going to work because there will be another child. There are 3 months of patients who are on the schedule currently expecting an appointment during that time. It's not possible, A, for her to see them during that time, or B, for her to magically develop the time to be able to look in detail at all of those appointments, and be able to figure out where each of those patients go. And this will not shock anyone. There is currently no plan for someone to come in and do panel replacement while she is out on maternity leave. Because I don't know about you, I have not been seeing people coming in and really covering maternity leaves for one person. Again, that's a whole separate issue. We're going to leave that one aside. But here we are with a lot of patients who need to be seen. So when we flipped the tone, we went from it's not possible to it's not possible. Our shoulders settled, right? The tone of the conversation changed because then we can say, you're right, it's not possible. It's not possible for us to see those patients before or after, really, because let's be honest, right? There's no room before the leave and there's no room after the leave because I'm sure there are already patients on the schedule for that time. So that's not possible. It is absolutely possible for her workplace to hire someone to see those patients, but that is not currently what they are planning to do. That's on them. And it is also not possible or reasonable for my client to sit down and look at her schedule in detail and come up with a plan for each patient. So we aren't doing that. We aren't doing that. Now, when we decided, you're right, it's not possible. We could say it's also not reasonable, but we're saying it's not possible for me to do that. There's no time that is going to be set aside to do that, and we are not willing to donate our time to do that, so we are saying it is not possible. Then we get to move on into the next stage. All right, if it's not possible, what is possible? Then we get to figure out how are we going to move forward. And for this instance, we decided that there would be sort of a quick look through the schedule to pull out the patients who absolutely need to be seen during that time. They've got chronic disease follow-up, right? They've got something, those are patients that need to be seen. There are going to be some patients who are on the schedule for a wellness visit. We are going to delegate that somebody else is going to need to see them, or they are going to need to wait in some way, but we are not going to automatically reschedule those patients, and we're not going to go through and deep dive. Now, you know and I know that everybody shows up for their wellness visit with a list of 17 things. That is not what a wellness visit is for, right? We aren't going to take responsibility for that in this instance. We are going to say, hey, that is non-urgent, that can wait. If we have to see this doctor, if we will not see somebody else, we're not willing to see somebody else, that's fine. But this doc is not going to sit down and micromanage those wellness visits. Again, it's not possible. So we are going to delegate that. She is willing to look and see, to take a small amount of time, right, to look and see who is going to need to be seen and to delegate, again, these patients. This is the list of people who have to be rescheduled, right? Everything else is going to need to be delegated, deferred, something. So we can break it down when it's not possible. Then we get to move into figuring out what is possible. And, one common tool for that is looking at the list of things or looking at the situation, deciding what is going to be delegated, what is going to be deferred, which you can also call creative procrastination. I'll come back to that one. What is it you're going to do? And what is it you're going to dump or delete? Now, the list of things that we are going to do should be relatively small. The list of things that we are going to delegate, I wish that list was bigger, but you know and I know that there's often not a lot of people to help out with that. But again, that is not our problem here. It will still have to fall to somebody else because if her workplace does not help, there is going to be a day where she does not come into the office because she's in labor or she's on bed rest or she has delivered that kid. Now, if there are 3 months worth of patients on her schedule at that time, guess who's going to be dealing with it? Not her. So it is in the interest of her organization to do something about it, to pick up the slack. Who knows what they're going to do? Again, that is not my client's problem because we have decided what she will and won't do and how is she going to delegate some responsibility to others, right? She did not choose to be booked out for a year. She did not choose to be overpaneled like that. Anyway, again, whole separate issue. And then thinking about situations, what are we going to defer? And I mentioned the term creative procrastination. So, this idea is, I think, a really good one, and it can be used to variable levels of success. But there are probably some things that are going to be going on during that period of time that would be professional interests or maybe projects or things that she wants to be involved in. But again, there's a baby coming, right? So we are going to need to defer some things. Now, that might not apply super in this situation, but it applies in many situations, right? When you're thinking, my schedule is impossible, there are going to be some things that need to be deferred. It's important, but it's not important right now. And I'm going to need to come back to it at a different time. Creative procrastination is a way to think about it. We're not thinking that it's completely unimportant, but we are saying it's not important for right now. Now, sometimes that is going to be something that is important to you that you don't have time to do right now. It's not appropriate to delegate it to someone else. You can't actually do it right now. You don't want to dump it. Let's keep a list. Let's keep it somewhere of things that we're going to defer for now. We can come back to it. Now, it might be that later we decide, you know what, we actually don't really want to do that anymore. That project no longer makes sense. Something has changed, right? It's not going to happen. But for right now, we are deferring it. We're going to move it to a list. So we don't have to keep it in our brain, right? It's still there. It's still available. It could still be picked up later. But we are not going to be taking action on it right now. Times it's going to be a project that someone else has asked us to do, but we are not able to do it right now. And we all know how that goes, right? You're asked to create something, you're asked to contribute to something, maybe you're asked to start something, and you're not given any time, space, guidance on it, right? And maybe it's not that important to you. You know what? We're going to defer that. We're going to defer that because it's not a priority for us. We don't have time to do it. Perhaps we didn't get much of a choice in it, but if there's no time, space, and energy for it right now, no guidance, we're not going to do it. So that gets moved to the list of defer. Now, we didn't drop it, but if somebody comes around and asks, hey, where are we at with that? And you say, well, I wasn't given any guidance. I wasn't given any time to work on it. So I've put it aside for right now. There's not much argument for that, right? We are people who need time and energy to work on something. Now, yes, there are going to be some things that we do need to do, but again, I'm going to say that we're pretty good at figuring out what those things are, right? It's clear that we know how to do those things. So, deferring creative procrastination is saying this is something that's important either to me or to someone else, but we're going to put it aside. Okay. And then dump. There are going to be some things that we are going to need to dump. We're going to need to let go of. Sometimes those are going to be things that we have on our list for us that really don't need to be done. Sometimes that is going to be something that we are maybe asked to do, expected to do. But again, there's no time or energy, and it's really, really unimportant. Someone has asked us, could we do something, maybe in a people pleasing sense, we said yes, or maybe, there were priorities that were different. We're going to need to dump it. Give yourself permission to dump some things. Sometimes you're going to need to go back to that person and say, you know what, I had agreed to do this, but I'm not able to do that anymore. This project is going to have to be moved to somebody else. And if they say, well, nobody else can do it, then they're going to need to decide, is it a priority? Does it need to be sent to somebody else? But it's okay for you to say, no, I can't do it. So when we have moved out of a reaction and put this into a response or a reflection, we've moved it from it's not possible to it's not possible. And we've decided if it's not possible, what am I going to do, delegate, defer, dump, right? Then we can think about how is it that I want it to feel knowing that it's not possible? This is a big one. And a lot of productivity gurus, right, who will go through this delegate, defer, do, dump, kind of mindset will ignore this one. But it's really important. How do I want to be feeling? How do I want to be feeling knowing that it's not possible? If I know that, let's say I've got a primary care panel of, 2,000 people, that's like adjusted blah, blah, blah for complexity, it's not possible for me to be solely responsible for the health and well being of 2,000 people. It's not possible. How do we know that? We know that from studies. We know that from studies that have shown that a primary care person with a full panel, as a typical size, which 2,000 is a fairly typical size. Sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller, but that's fairly typical. Um, to take care of all the wellness preventative, all the chronic conditions, all the acute care, all the vaccines, all the things that we have to keep up for a primary care person, 26.7 hours per day was what was needed in order to take care of this primary care panel, right? This was a study that came out in the Medical Economics Journal, I believe, in August of 2022. I refer to it all the time because it is important that we recognize, 26.7 hours does not exist in a 24-hour day. It doesn't exist. They went on to say that when there is a high functioning primary care team in place, right, where there are people supporting the primary care physician, the number of hours that the primary care physician would spend on the care of that same panel would be something like 9 hours, 9 point something, 20 per 24-hour day, or 9 hours per day. I don't know that many people who are working with a high functioning primary care team. There are some. I would say that probably most of those people are in some kind of a private practice setting or some kind of a well-resourced system, right? That really gets it, that has looked at data like this and said, "Ooh, we need to be taking care of our primary care people because they take care of our patients," right? But by and large, that is not what our systems are doing, right? Our systems are squeezing out as much as they can get from skeleton crews of support people and putting more of the onus again and again on the physicians. That has happened with the introduction of the electronic medical record, with all of these, just all these metrics that we're tracked on, right? It is not possible for me to find 26.7 hours in a 24-hour day. It's not possible. So if it's not possible, how do I want to feel about it? I want to feel like I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to know that I'm not going to be able to meet all of the needs of that care panel. I'm going to choose to understand that, to feel settled and calm, that I am not the person. It's not possible for me as a single person to be able to do all of that. And so when people are frantically coming to me and they're saying, "Oh, your patient, oh, your patient," and there's this and this and this, and they want to dump it all on me. I'm going to stay settled in it. I cannot do all of that. And that energy we know comes to us all the time, right? Where we are getting constant contact and communication, right? That we are not hitting it, that we are not taking care of all their needs. That is going to happen. But if I choose to feel calm and settled, knowing that I can't do it all, I'm going to keep my shoulders down. I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to set healthy boundaries. And I'm just going to know that that's the energy that's going to come at me. And I get to choose how I reflect it back. I get to choose what I think. I get to choose how I feel about the situation. I know that it is not possible for me to do all of those things. And because I know that, I am able to stay calm. I am able to say, well, I understand that Mrs. Jones showed up in the lobby. I understand that she really wants to be seen. And I've got a full schedule today. I'm not able to see her. If she needs to be seen and I can't see her, we can ask if anyone else can see her. And if no one else can see her in the clinic, she will need to go to urgent care. She will need to go blah, 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 blah. She will need to wait. She will need to get an appointment. People will continue to make it feel like it is our problem. But it is not possible for me to actually meet the needs of that many people. It is not my fault that that is true, right? And we have data to show that it is not Mrs. Jones's fault or anyone else involved. But the reality is that I cannot squeeze more out of my day. I'm going to need to stay calm in that rather than get wrapped up and frustrated and frazzled and overwhelmed. Now, there are lots of different circumstances that many of us work in, right? You may work in a small community where maybe there aren't more resources. If that is the case, then you're going to need to have more same day and sort of, short-term availability set aside, knowing that there's not other places for people to go and knowing that acute care needs will happen. It is not predictable who is going to show up and need that stuff, right? But it is fairly predictable that, for a clinic of a certain size, right, bound to be X number of people who need to be seen acutely each week. And that might vary throughout the year depending on what's going on, right? But we can predict that people are going to have acute needs, and we're going to need to accommodate that, right? That might be true also in an underserved, low resource setting, right? Where patients are not going to be able to go to the urgent care or the emergency room. They can't get there, right? Then the schedules need to be able to accommodate that, right? If that's going to be successful for everyone. And success, I mean like adequate, right? We are, in a higher resource setting. I practice in Seattle. I have a huge number of, sort of doc in the box little urgent care clinics, as well as a variety of emergency rooms around. If we can't see somebody in our clinic, if we can't work them in, and we always try, then our patients are generally able to go elsewhere. They are able to get their acute care needs, right? And I trust that I, as an individual, cannot do it all. I can't do it all. I actually have a much smaller panel than that, but that is just not what I'm able to accommodate, right? I need to stay settled in that, right? Rather than wrapped up in a frantic energy. I know that there are a variety of different circumstances, right? And you might say, well, that's not possible for me. It's not possible for me. It is possible for you to do this work and to say, it's not possible for me to be responsible for this number of people, to be able to accommodate, especially when my schedule is already overbooked. And we know that people will have acute care needs. We just don't know who it is yet, but there's a certain cadence, right? If you as an individual can look at that and say, it is not possible for me to do that, right? Then you get to decide, will you go to your leadership and say, we need more same day availability? If you get told no, what will you do? You will respond clearly by saying, no, I cannot work extra people in today. I've already done that, right? And you will continue to demonstrate that it is not possible to do all of these things. If you are in a completely unrealistic setting and no one will look at this data with you, no one will make any accommodations, and you're constantly truly being forced to work extra people, you will need to decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in that situation? Or are you going to say, it's not possible for me to be sane, healthy, take care of myself in this kind of a circumstance, right? None of us should be staying in completely unsustainable toxic situations, but we're going to need to look at that. And rather than think, I'm supposed to be able to do all of these things, to be able to say, it's not possible for me to do these things. It's not possible. I know for me, for the way that I take care of patients, I know what my capacity is. Everybody's energy, capacity, and ability is going to be slightly different, no matter what the systems say. The systems would like us all to be the same. They'd also like us to be highly empathic, super functional, super efficient, people who can just churn through, always keep people happy, always, order just the right tests and not too early and not too many, right? And I'm sorry, that's just not how it is, right? But if I know what my energy and capacity is, if I'm able to state my boundaries clearly, if I'm able to know what's okay, what's not okay, and to know what I can and can't do, I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to choose to feel calm and settled, knowing that it's not possible for me to do what they've asked me to do. So I hope that this is a helpful way to sort of think about things. If you are constantly finding yourself in that reactive, stuck sort of feeling of, it's not possible, it's impossible for me to do this, It's impossible for you to know all this. It's impossible for me. Remember when you were in medical school, there was probably a part of you that's like, it's not possible for me to know all these things. It's not possible for me to learn all of these things. You're right. It's not possible for you to learn all of those things. You saw that over time. You're right. It's not possible for me to learn all these things. I need to learn these things for right now. I will need to learn new things over time. I will need to weed out, things that are no longer true, right? You did not learn every word in that textbook, and that was the end of the story. No, of course not. It was not possible for you to learn and hit it all. It was not possible. Same idea, right? We can look back on medical school now and be like, God, I know it was not possible for me to learn all of that, right? And you did probably better than you thought you would. Anyway, but if we can be clear that it's not possible for me to do all this, it's not possible for me to be the only one taking care of all these patients, it's not possible for me to work people, and it's not possible for me to be responsible for all these things. And I own that, and I set boundaries accordingly, and I choose to stay calm and settled, and I choose what needs to be delegated, deferred, done, dumped, right? I'm going to be in a much calmer, much more sustainable energy and be able to show up and do the work when it's time to do the work, be able to have the rest that I need, be able to spend time with friends and loved ones that I need, right? Be able to live. That is what I want for all of us. And you will need to go through this kind of work in order to get there, right? Because our system will not hand that to you. All right. So that's what I've got for you today. And my friends, I wish you all a wonderful week. Until next time, take care.